Hi Creekside Hawks, it's Mrs. Timm and I'm coming to you from Mrs. Timm's kitchen. I'm glad you're joining me today as I talk to you about safety in your kitchen, because it's my guess that you might be in your kitchen a little more in the coming weeks than you normally are. So we're going to start with 4 basic areas that you need to consider for safety when you're in your kitchen. The first area is getting ready. Number 1, getting ready. And before you begin to do anything in the kitchen, the first thing you need to do is ask permission. You always need to ask permission if you can be in the kitchen and cooking. So ask your grown-up, and as long as you have permission, you can start preparing your space for cooking as well. So, because I am a grown-up, I have permission. So here we go. You can see that I've done some other things to prepare and get ready. I've put on an apron to protect my clothes. I've pulled back my hair so that it doesn't get in the food. No one likes to eat hair, right? And I've also pushed up my sleeves. I've wiped off my counter and made sure that it's clean surface for doing cooking on. And then probably the next most important thing, I have to wash my hands. So join me over at the sink. I'm gonna wash my hands. We're gonna turn on the water and I'll get my hands wet. Then I'll take a little squirt of soap. And some people sing a little song. It's up to you. But basically the important part is that you wash the front and the back of your hands, your thumbs too, and between your fingers. And just make sure that they're nice and clean. Rinse them thoroughly. And then dry them on a clean towel, which I have right here. All right, step 1, getting ready, is about finished. Let's move on to step 2, which is hot stuff. We're going over to the stove. Okay, area number 2, hot stuff. That's right, your microwave, your stove, your oven, and for me, even my toaster oven. These are all hot stuff areas in my kitchen, and they probably are in yours as well. The number 1 thing when you're dealing with hot stuff is, again, permission. Make sure that you have permission from a grown-up to be using the hot stuff in your kitchen, and also some supervision is nice. And then the second thing is safety. I mean, protection and safety, because when things are hot, people can be burned. So if you're cooking on your stovetop and you have a saucepan like this, you want to make sure that the handle of your saucepan stays over the stove so that anyone walking by wouldn't accidentally knock it off and spill hot contents onto their feet and the floor. Handles hanging over the edge are a real danger. Secondly, you want to make sure that you always assume that everything is hot. Always assume that everything on top of the stove is hot. There's a lot of tricky things with heat and conductors. Some pots are not hot on top, some are hot on top, but if you always wear an oven mitt, then you are always protected. So I'm going to remove the lid of this pot safely with an oven mitt and have a place to put it down that's also safe and protected. Also, the utensils that sometimes we use when we're cooking, some of them conduct heat as well. If there's a wooden spoon in a pot, wood is not a good conductor, and wood will not get hot. But if there's a metal spoon in a pot and it's left in there, it will get very hot, and when you came back to stir, you could end up burning yourself seriously. My favorite utensil in my kitchen, which will come as no surprise to any of you, is my happy spatula. Okay. When you're using the oven, if it's time to put something in or out of the hot oven, make sure that you get a grown-up to at least supervise, if not help with this. So always assume that everything is hot. Wear a hot pad on both hands, okay? Both hands. So I'm gonna put my oven mitts on both hands. And then think ahead a little bit. I'm gonna take something hot out of the oven. I need to have a safe spot to set it down. So open the oven. Reach in with your hot pads, remove the hot item, set it on your pre-prepared spot, right? And then close the oven door, not forgetting to turn off your oven. That's it. That's the hot stuff. Oven mitts, safety, permission, protection, and also if you're cooking something in the hot area of your kitchen, stay with that while it's cooking. Don't walk away and run and watch a show and then think later, what's that smell? Because something's probably burning. All right, we're gonna go to number 3, area of safety for the kitchen, and that is sharp stuff. Come on. talking about safety in the kitchen has to do with sharp stuff. That's right. And the most important thing to remember before you start dealing with sharp stuff is that you have permission, right? Permission is always first. Also, use the right size knife for the job. See that my knives have these protective covers on them? That's handy for when you're storing them. I'm going to use two different knives. One of them is just a regular straight knife, and one of them has little teeth or ridges on it. That's called a serrated knife. That's really good for sawing things. Anyway, so I'm going to cut two different things today with two different knives. I'm going to cut some little tomatoes, and I'm going to do that safely. And the way that I'm going to do that, just so you know, I've already washed these and they're in a little colander and they've dried. So I'm going to take one of these tomatoes, and for some reason tomatoes do a lot better job cutting if you use one of those serrated knives with the little teeth on it. So I'm going to put the tomato down on a cutting board, because of course we're always going to cut down on a cutting board. That's the safest for our hands so that we don't cut ourselves. And then just use a gentle sawing motion across. It's very easy. Using the cutting board is very important. Sometimes we might be tempted to cut like this toward ourselves. Ooh, what happens if you slip? Then it's not red tomato juice coming out of a tomato, it's you bleeding in your food. Ugh. We don't want to hurt or cut ourselves in any way. So that's how we cut our tomatoes and everything, using a cutting board. Then I have a really fun cutting board that I can just pick it up and bend it, and oh, I almost made it. And then the next thing, we're going to cut a pickle. That's right, a big green pickle. And we're going to use our standard knife that doesn't have the serrated edge. And on these, you can just use a gentle sawing motion and kind of press down a little bit. Ooh, that's a tough pickle. Anyway, you use the cutting board to make sure that your hands are safe. You keep your fingers back from where you're cutting, and you just work along, quick, 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 not too quick. And you cut up whatever it is that you're working on and put it right into your bowl when you're done. When you're done using knives, if you happen to have warm water in your sink because you're about to clean up, don't just drop knives into the sink, because then when you reach in to wash dishes, you can poke yourself and hurt yourself. That brings us to the last step, and that is cleaning up. I always taught my kids about the ABCs of cleaning, of cooking, that as we go along, we should ABC, always be cleaning up as we go. If you ever spill something, make sure you clean it up right away. As you're going along, if you're opening cupboard doors, close them so that you don't bonk your head. And then wash your dishes carefully, putting things into the dishwasher, and leave the kitchen nicer than it was when you found it. That'll make getting permission next time easier. Hey, I hope you've learned a lot about safety in your kitchen, and I'm going to come back to you soon and share some recipes with you. I'm going to share a recipe that's going to be breakfast with berry. So we'll see you soon. Bye. I miss you.